Hey guys, it's Graham. What's cracking? I finished my reading of Mockingjay. This is the fourth reading that I've done. Pretty much every time I pick up the Hunger Games, I'll end up reading the entire trilogy. The last time that I did was in 2018, or maybe it was 2020. No, I'm pretty sure it was 2018. That's one of the advantages of Goodreads is it helps you track all of that. Um, Man, this was a book that improved greatly on my second reading of it. And over the years, as I've reflected on it, I've realized like why I struggled my way through it the first time. I felt like I had to give it 5 stars in 2010 because I'd been so excited for it. I anticipated it. And then when it came out and I read it and I got to the end, I was kind of bloody miserable with how it failed to deliver on my expectations. But on a second reading, a couple of years later, it might have been 2012, I realized what she was actually saying with it. What was the point of this story? With trilogies like this, you as a reader could be forgiven for expecting it to wrap up all neat and tidy and with a bow on it, and have a happy ending for all of our plucky, down on their luck, rebellious heroes who are going up against the evil giant government superpower. Um, there were a lot of ways that Mockingjay didn't deliver on that expectation and on that trope and on that cliche, but that is because you have to realize that it's not the kind of book that Suzanne Collins was writing. That wasn't the theme that she was pursuing, the idea that she was exploring, and it really wasn't what she was trying to say. Going all the way back to the first book, it was a trade-off of choices. Katniss was a hunter, she was not a killer, but the choice was, does she keep her hands clean and send her sister off to the games, or does she go in her sister's place and have to kill people to stay alive? And the choice is then presented as a trade-off. It's like, well, I will eat this sin, I will put this on my conscience in order to guarantee the safety of someone that I love. Obviously, there's a snowball effect to this. The spark kicks off. There's a lot of imagery of powder kegs and such. And once this thing finally goes full kaboom and the dust settles, her entire home city is destroyed. The little sister that she went into the games to protect is dead. And really nothing is going to change. The government is going to change hands, but they want to keep doing the same things that the previous government had been doing. And she, in her frustration and her impotence, finally realizes what was at stake. And that's why when she's brought up ceremonially to kill President Snow from the Capitol, she instead kills President Coin from District 13 to somewhat suicidally put an end to this cycle. She expects to die as a result, but she's so depressed and traumatized that she doesn't care. She's going to take whatever opportunity that she can to kind of scream her rage out at the world, but ultimately, at least in her own eyes, fail to do the thing that she set out to do all the way back in the beginning of the very first book. What Suzanne Collins then is exploring is, and I talk about this every time I talk about Mockingjay, the idea that war is not a guarantee. And you can't purchase with 100% certainty the security and safety of your loved ones by then carrying out violent acts against others. You can set something in motion that you very easily can't control, and you're not going to like the result, and you're probably not even going to like who you are at the other end of it. It's not to say that a war should never be fought, because again, what was the alternative? That Katniss just let Prim go into the games and die all the way back in the first book? Because that would also cost her. There are forces that exert themselves on you, and you can do what you can to fight against them, but there is a cost to all of these things no matter what you do. That is, in essence, a key component to the entire human story. There's a bit of commentary near the end of this one, I believe in chapter 27, when the war is over and the new government is set up, and Plutarch and Haymitch and Katniss are all flying home. And Plutarch expresses a silly sentiment, but I think it's a very relatable one, that every human being has felt at the end of a protracted military conflict. He says, maybe we'll finally get it right after this, and we won't go to war again, and we won't do this to each other again. But that has been the long, sad history of humanity, is that we'll always find a reason to go to war with each other. Sometimes it's even a good reason, but you can't control the outcome. We look at Dresden in World War II, a city that got firebombed off the map by the Allies. And for what? What did it secure? What did it change? Some things, sure. Others, very likely not. There's a final point that I want to make here, and this is by no means going to be a comprehensive analysis of the book, especially not in contrast with the movie. But one of my frustrations with the Mockingjay movies, other than the fact that they split them, is changes that they made to the dynamic between Katniss and Gale versus how it was portrayed in the book. Obviously, there was some will they, won't they. There was some the lovey-dovey romance stuff that the teen girl readers wanted to read at the time. But upon several readings, the dynamic is much more complex than that. Obviously, there's a yearning between these two characters for each other, but they are also just teenagers, and they don't know how to definitely settle their emotions and come to a conclusive decision about how they feel about each other. And they are also transformed by this conflict as it unfolds. Katniss is increasingly traumatized by her 2 trips to the Hunger Games, and Gale, who has been sidelined on both of those trips of hers, is now of age and in a setting where he can influence the war. He can be a soldier, he can be a fighter, he can make decisions, he can engineer weapons and traps and stuff. And as the story unfolds, Katniss sees him start to cross ethical lines that he wouldn't have crossed before, including triggering avalanches on a mountain to trap people in a mine, despite the fact that a mining accident is how his father and Katniss's father died. And she's like, "Hey, we're miners. This should be like the one thing that we don't do." And he's like, "We need to end this war." He also comes up with a bomb that would have a 2-stage deployment thing. It would go off, it would injure a bunch of people, it would lure in the emergency services, and then the second phase would go off, and it would hurt the medics, and that would be a massive blow to the morale, to say nothing of the safety infrastructure of the opposing army. It is this exact type of weapon that kills Prim. And after the war, and after the dust settles, Katniss and Gale have a conversation about that. And in the book, they are both extremely distraught over it. He's been avoiding her for a while. She wants to talk to him, but he finally has to cop to it. She asks him, "Was it your bomb that did it?" And he's like, "I don't know, but I don't think it matters." Does it matter? Because it was an idea that I had, and I'll never be able to know. The fact that I can't tell you yes or no is bad enough. And that puts a schism between them, because he knows that lack of certainty is going to eat him alive for the rest of his life. And so does she. They both realize what this whole war has cost them. And he says farewell on his terms, and owns the choices that he made, but he's still never able to fully say one way or another whether it was his bomb that killed Prim. In the movie, it's played like he's coming to her sheepishly because he knows that it was his, and she blames him even though she doesn't know whether it was his. And there's a lot more one-sided animosity between, from her towards him. I hate the way that that was portrayed, not because of any particular affinity for one character or both characters or what have you, but because it muddied the meaning of that moment. The realization that why should they have been okay with doing that to anybody if they weren't okay with doing it to somebody innocent who they loved? And Katniss wasn't on board with that type of weapon, but it just, these things have a cost. They have costs and they don't have guarantees. And that's ultimately what Mockingjay was about. Even when you're the good guys, you don't divinely get to determine what the outcome of a conflict like this is going to be. And so it's not such a happy, tie a bow on it, everybody, all the good guys win and all the bad guys die type book. And I think that's what helps it to kind of transcend the young adult fiction of its era and become more of a valuable piece of literature to examine this part of the human condition, if you want to be pompous about it. But really, it's got something much more profound and intense to ask. That is, if you do this, what price are you willing to pay for it? And even if you survive it, if somebody else doesn't, are you ready to carry that for the rest of your life? Very, very big questions, and these things sit heavy, but these are also things that are a constant part of humanity and always have been. And until we can come up with a permanent, safe solution to this kind of question, this kind of problem, we need to be constantly vigilant. I mean, that right there was the meaning of the whole Panem et Circenses thing. You can trade not just your security necessarily for food and for entertainment and for distraction, but you're abdicating your political responsibilities for those things. There is societally, culturally, a cost for that. We're witnessing it right now in a financial sense. Very timely that this whole bit with the congressional vote on a financial continuing resolution, which I feel like we've been doing CRs for the last 15 years. It's insane. This vote came down, and Representative Thomas Massey of Kentucky went against his own party, which has the majority in the House of Representatives, and said, we need to stop freaking doing this. We need to actually pass a budget, and one that doesn't have a deficit. And he's a Republican, and for the second time in his congressional career, President Trump has threatened to primary this man to get him out of Congress because, hey, he needs to get on board with the message. And he's like, no, we need to stop doing the thing that keeps deflating our currency's value and causing inflation, causing our money to lose its value, blah, blah, blah. And, actually take on the hard responsibility of governing and acting the right way. To an extent, that's kind of the point of what Mockingjay in particular and the Hunger Games trilogy at large is all about. There are costs to everything. The cost of living in a free society in a republic is that we've all got to take what responsibility is due to us and be prepared to live with the consequences. An extremely profound book, and every time I read it, I'm glad that I did. Anyway, that's it for this reading of Mockingjay. I'll read it again in a couple of years. One more week until Sunrise on the Reaping comes out, and I could not be more excited for this book. I really hope that it just continues to expand on what she's established here. I'm glad that I reread this trilogy to focus specifically on the details of Haymitch's story. I'm curious to see how it works into here. All right, drive safe. See you out there.